I don't feel good about being white every day.
This is the delivery mechanism.
And I'm just a female, but just a woman, just a white woman.
This is the payload.
If I was a white man, I would be functioning from a point of an even greater privilege.
If I see a group of young men, and they're like kind of boisterous, I get really nervous. And he's like, well, what if they're black guys? And then she's like, no, wait.
They want to use conviction rates to show the percentage of men that engage in sexual crime relative to women. They don't want us to actually look at the racial composition of the men who are going to jail for sexual assault.
And then they create a hierarchy, and it puts straight white guys at the very bottom and all the other men like just above that. And then you get onto the other identities, right?
It is impossible for the CDC, that is the Center of Disease Control, to find 3 years in a row parity in sexual assault victimization with significant amounts of that victimization done by women to men.
I think that it's a fundamental unfairness that women are allowed to vote on policies for warfare that they then don't have to go fight.
Men don't get the vote if they don't sign up. Women get the vote by default. So literally, men actually have less of the right to vote. Not that the vote is a right, because it's not. But they have less of access to the vote than women do.
Keep your vote, but get rid of the narrative that you're a victim relative to men.
So that's the goal. Why I joke about the 19th all the time. I don't think it's going away because women would actually have to vote for that. And I don't think that's going to happen. All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame. Calling out theft is patriarchal oppression. How ICE protests turn policing into fascism. Where we are going to be talking about the ongoing developments in Minnesota, which don't show any signs of slowing down. And some of like the root of this, like where is this coming from? Things like that, of that nature.
The men's rights analysis.
Huh?
The men's rights analysis of where this is coming from.
Yes.
So
so basically pull up a seat, a chair, a cigar, and a martini and join us. Or if you prefer a beer. I'm drinking a sugar-free beverage.
I'm having some chai tea, so I guess I'm some kind of hipster, I think. Is that what it, or is chai tea acceptable?
I don't know if the hipsters are still drinking chai. That's kind of mainstream now.
So, okay.
You can get it at Starbucks, right?
I'd have to have a maca latte. That would make me hipsterish or hipster adjacent.
Yeah, maybe a matcha, but I think even those, probably you have to have yerba mate. That's what. Yeah, I think that's the last.
That's the new thing.
It's the last thing that has been completely corporatized and taken over by the man. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure there's big yerba mate though. Anyway, so if at any point throughout the show you want to send us a message, the very best way to do that is at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. You get the benefit of sending your message, not through YouTube's comment labyrinth of fun, and we get the full benefit of whatever funds you send. And so it's a win-win. Not so much a win for YouTube, but who's counting? And so once again, that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And we do have our monthly fundraiser live now. So if you would like to help out there, that is feedthebadger.com/support. And also, I'll give you more options. Like there's stuff in the low bar too, links to our community, links to subscribing, that kind of thing. So check those out if you want to support us, because we definitely come at these situations from a very different angle. So, do you want me to just read like an overview of what's going on? Or did you, Brian? Or did you have something prepared?
Well, I mean, I think it's I think that you can do it. I mean,
okay, sure.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So
yeah, okay. So the ICE conflict is still alive and volatile. Protests in Minnesota and other cities have pushed from street clashes into institutions like churches. And activists now are floating mass disruption tactics rather than winding down. So the situation: 2 ICE shootings Renee Good in Minneapolis and another in Portland, triggered large ICE out for good protests and counter protests across multiple US cities. And also lots and lots and lots of argument over who was in the wrong. Minneapolis, St. Paul remains the flashpoint with repeated clashes between anti-ICE demonstrators, federal agents, and local police near hotels, federal buildings, and residential neighborhoods. Federal security has expanded. DOJ and FBI are now probing both ICE's use of force and certain protest actions. Example, the church disruption, pulling this out of purely local politics and into national territory. Okay, so the latest planned disruptions on the anti-ICE side are church service disruptions in St. Paul, Minneapolis. Protesters entered a church service linked to an ICE-adjacent pastor. Was that actually confirmed? I don't even know. Chanting and
What?
confronting
An
congregants.
ICE-adjacent pastor?
Yeah, like is that was just something invented or?
I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
The thing is, how do you confirm it? What does
Yeah,
it mean
exactly.
to be
What does
ICE
it mean?
adjacent? What does that mean? That
That you
that you
believe
basically like follow the law?
that you believe that a country has the right
Yeah, that a country is
to
sovereign and
enforce
there's such a thing as legal and illegal
immigration.
citizenship.
Yeah, okay. I guess that the the DOJ has opened a civil rights investigation into whether worshipers' rights were violated. Continuing street protests, the federal and hotel sites. Demonstrators are still being held outside federal buildings, ICE offices, and hotels believed to be housing agents, with authorities describing sporadic clashes, tense standoffs, rather than a return to normal. Talk of a mass no work, no school, no stopping action. Labor-aligned organizers in Minnesota are openly discussing a January 23rd shutdown day tied to ICE and the shootings. Framed as a mass strike or boycott, even if it only partially materializes, it signals escalation planning. Well, you know what? I mean, at least that's not actually making things more dangerous on the streets. National solidarity protests and vigils. Protests and vigils connected to the Minneapolis and Portland shootings. I thought the Portland shooting, the guy was shot in the leg and survived. What is there that need a vigil? But anyway, sorry, maybe I'm just
Well, he didn't
confused.
die, and he's also not a person. So,
Well, I mean, no, it wasn't the ICE agent
oh,
actually
it was
shot
one
somebody
of
in
the
the leg.
protesters got shot in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
leg.
But
Yeah, it's
of
probably
course,
because he didn't die, and but I think also because it's not politically valuable. So like they can't use it. It's it's like why is
no.
it
They're
they
using the
pounce on
Portland
this
shooting.
whole what's her name again? Good
Renee
something?
Good. Yeah, Renee
Renee
Good.
Good. They pounce on
Yeah.
it primarily because she was a queer woman.
Mhm.
So if she wasn't a woman, it wouldn't have been as handy. There are probably a lot of injuries that are, and probably some serious ones on both sides. But because most of the
Mm.
people involved
Are
in this
men.
are men, it doesn't have any like gravitas. It's not emotionally useful, so
Yeah.
they ignore it. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably why that guy who got shot in the leg, they were like, whatever, it's just a dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they looks like they're doing vigils. They're probably folding it into the Renee Goods situation as well. But
Yeah,
yeah, generally that's true. If it had been an ICE officer who had died, nobody would care. It would be folded into workplace death statistics that feminists try to hide anyway. So no harm, no foul, apparently. So protests and vigils connected to the Minneapolis and Portland shootings are planned underway in other major cities, including Los Angeles, Portland, and East Coast hubs, often clustered around ICE officials or federal courts. Okay, so we have some clips that I wanted to go through today
yeah.
about, just what's going on, what ICE is up to. And do you want to like there were three that I was looking at, but there's a couple compilations that are interesting, but two that I think are really critical. And one is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to summarize it just off the top of my head. One is a situation where five men were having a kind of like an informal get together or meeting, and they were all part of the software industry. And protesters, ICE anti-ICE protesters identified these men as potential ICE agents and then started to surround the coffee shop where they were having a meeting. And one of the interesting aspects of this, which we will go through, is that one of these men apparently was himself anti-ICE. And as a result of this situation, he has been reconsidering his position. So do you want to pull that
Is
one
that
up? And we can have
this clip here put up by Clown World on X?
Yes.
And I won't read I'll read the description. Man in Minneapolis being confronted and labeled a Nazi over alleged
No, that's not
support.
the right one. That's
this is
the
a different one.
second. This is the second one. The first one should be.
Where's okay, you gotta which link is the one then?
So our
I don't know if I have that
DM,
one
like
up
the
and
thing, the
running.
DM I share with Brian is so freaking clogged with stuff that sometimes it can become very difficult to here you go. This will give you a direct link to the message so you can load that up. So apologies guys, it's just
I see
there's
it
a
here.
lot
Okay,
of
tech
information
workers,
that we're both
right. It's
there's
all
a
right.
lot of
It's
information
okay.
we're respectively sifting through. So go ahead and put that up and let's do it.
I'm gonna put it up here. All right, so this is it. Alpha News, tech workers say they were mistaken for ICE agents accosted by anti-ICE mob. So let's take a look at this. I will full screen it too. Okay, there's no sound. Hold on, I gotta do this. I gotta do this thing where I refresh it, stop sharing, and reshare. So just give me a second. I apologize. Okay. Shoot. Hold on. Gotta do this over again. Just a second. I apologize. Okay.
That's fine.
It's just like the Video Ninja is great, but it does have this thing where if you put up a web page and it's idle for too long, it will stop sharing the audio for that. So you have to like do it over again. But it doesn't take a second. All right.
This is so cool. So cool as in life. This has got to be the funniest thing I've ever seen. I know, it's like you feel like a zoo animal. I've never.
Then why do you care? You like a bitch. I'm just trying to enjoy my lunch. If you're not with us, then you're against us. So clear. Hi. So clear.
Oh my god. What? We do custom apps for a whole bunch of companies around Minnesota.
There's a bit of an echo. Going on.
Are you getting an echo?
Yeah, I'm getting a bit of an echo, but I just wanted to also point out what he said. We do apps. These are okay. You want to know what demographic these guys are? I'll give you. Why don't you guess, Brian? What demographic these
they're
guys?
straight white men, Allison.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they might not be straight white men. You never know.
Well, they're
white men.
They're at least coded straight white men.
Yes, of course, because gay men are the straight men of gay people.
Yeah, but I mean, like, let's just be real. Like, odds are they're straight. Like
odds are.
There's way more straight dudes than not straight dudes. Like, but the point is that in the eyes of these protesters, they see some white guys hanging out, and it immediately puts them in a category, right? According to the progressive stat, male, white,
of suspicion.
Probably straight, unless they're wearing feather boas and like booty shorts and they're singing girl and wearing eyeliner or something. They're just going to call them straight because you have to be like, you can't just be gay. You have to be out all the way, So, and otherwise you're just another straight guy to them.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. So this is just 5 guys at a coffee shop at a table. So it's an unsanctioned gathering of white men, essentially. An unsanctioned gathering of white men. And it's immediately suspect as apparently a potential ICE gang in these individuals' territory. So they have to respond like a out of control immune system to this irritant. And this isn't the only one, but let's finish this off.
Yep.
Do I look like an ICE agent?
Yeah, you look like a fucking ICE agent.
Holy fucking Christ.
Yes, you look like an ICE agent, dude, because you are probably a white man between the ages of 18 and 54,
Mm-hmm.
which is ICE coded now. Let's face it. A white man between the ages of maybe 25 and 45. If you're a white man between the ages of 25 and 45, it doesn't matter what you're wearing or what you're doing, or if you're drinking yerba mate, you are now considered a suspect ICE agent. I wonder why. I wonder how this is all collapsed into that. Hey, how did that all collapse down into every one of those guys in my comments? Although I think Errors might be a woman. Every one of those guys in my comments, all of you, arguing that ICE, they deserve it or whatever else. Well, you're basically arguing that you should be under suspicion at this point. That if you're just a white dude between the ages of 25 and 45, that you should be under suspicion, that you should be targeted because you are now you're ICE adjacent. Let's face it, right, Brian? You're part of the white patriarchy, so you're ICE adjacent. You can do performative virtue all you like, but we all know what demographic is most likely to be racist, don't we? We all know what demographic is most likely to be anti-immigration, don't we? So you can be as much of an ally as you want, and it won't defend you from being targeted in the moment. And that's what this is showing. Let's finish it off.
This is what's wrong with the talk.
No, it's not. Because you have no relationship with us. Do you
Why
support?
the fuck would I be support?
Would you support?
Support what? The way you guys are acting?
You support
Fuck no.
ICE? Oh, okay. Yeah.
The way you guys are, I don't support ICE either.
Bootlicker either way. Then why do you care? Then you should.
I'm just trying to enjoy my lunch.
If you're not.
I'm just trying to enjoy it while you're eating your lunch while white male and unaffiliated. I mean, at this point, if you're white male and unaffiliated, you're ICE adjacent. Like, people think that I'm exaggerating, but how did this happen? How did an anti-ICE mob descend on, I don't know if it was a coffee shop or a lunch place, just because there was a group of 5 men eating at a table who happened to be white men? How did that happen? How did the threat detection decide that this was a problem? Right? What were they queuing to? What were they being triggered by? Okay, think about that. Okay, so any thoughts, Brian, before we read the Twitter tweet?
I will say, the only thing I'll say is that this is not new. This is the progressive stack in action. And the problem with these men was, even though they weren't ICE, and even though they were not, I don't even think they were anti-ICE, because the guy technically said, I don't support them, which means, maybe he's sort of against it, but not, he doesn't feel strongly enough to go out in the streets and protest or whatever, probably because he has a job and he had to do his job. That's why he was like, I'm just trying to enjoy my lunch, because he's just living his life. A lot of people that have an opinion on this either way, they're generally busy, they have jobs, and a lot of the people who are protesting don't have jobs, and I mean, they have obviously the free time to do that, so that's that's part of it too. But I think what the protesters were angry about when they first, yes, they did have that conclusion, but again, they have been conditioned to find men, and white men in particular, suspicious. Period.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets presented this way on the media. It's like a 24-hour news cycle that's just constantly churning out this narrative. But I don't think it's new. I think this is just what the purpose of the progressive stack is to essentially alienate, exclude, and criminalize men, but particularly white men. And that's why these women, who are probably white women, are completely okay with it. And so when that didn't work out, I think that what came next was they were like, well, if you claim that you're not one of them, then why aren't you out here with us? which is why
Yeah.
they made that. They said, you know, you're either with us or against us. So basically, there
Mhm.
is no indifferent position. You can't even be like passively supportive. You can't be like, well, you know, I appreciate what you guys are doing, but I got my own personal responsibilities. I got my own personal stuff going on. They're gonna be like, no, you don't. That obviously means you don't care because you haven't, you know, essentially thrown your life away to support us. And so that's where that whole, you know, you're either with us or you're against us comes from. That's why these guys are tarred with suspicion. And I hope that those guys reconsider. I really do, because these people are not their friends at all. They are their enemy. And they
Well,
will
look,
treat
look at
them
the
as
situation. Look at the situation. These are just what was their crime according to these? They were just being
men
white
hanging out
men in
together in
public.
public, eating.
Yeah, and probably Latino men would probably be eventually folded into that. Might be a little harder to do black men, but if because
Oh,
of
they
the nature
will. I
of the
mean, again, that
yeah,
we've seen that, like, you know, Latino men, they are the enemy because they came out in record numbers in the last election. So they're no longer protected anymore, unless of course they're illegals, in which case they are. But like the legal Latinos, no. You know, so
yeah,
I think that the racial thing is just like it adds a little bit of a wrinkle, but it doesn't really stop anything. Because really
yeah,
what it comes down to is, you know, are you serving our
cause, yeah,
ideology or our cause or not? And if you are, then you're allowed in, but you know, this is conditional that you continuously prove yourself. And if you are not, then you are basically not human.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but what I wanted to point out is that this is the targeting of a particular demographic, and it's targeting because these are men who are not obviously aligned with them, and this is targeting men. So it's becoming a situation where men can't be in public. Specifically, if you're a white man, you might get away with it if you're men of other races or obviously gay, but men can't be in public unless they affiliate with this side. And if they don't, they're going to be targeted, right? And even if they do, they can still be targeted. So what I'm saying is that at a fundamental level, at a fundamental kind of knee-jerk level, these people have declared who their enemy actually is. Let's be
mhm.
honest, right? White men in particular, and all men in universal at some point. Okay. You know, and that's what this shows.
Yep.
What was their great crime? What got them targeted? 5 white men in public having lunch. That's what got, and they had laptops apparently. Oh boy. Jeez. That's
They're
really
going to use those
suspicious.
laptops to do a fascism.
Yeah, they were going to
They're
do
going to
those
form a firing squad of
of
laptops
of
and
aggressive
execute
coding.
the women or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just want you to note that like this is illustrating who is considered outside of their or in the sights of their threat narrative, right? Who has to make an effort to show they aren't deserving of violence? Who has to make an effort to show that they actually belong? Who's eventually going to have to wear gang colors so they aren't assaulted in public? That you right here you can see exactly who is outside of their circle of acceptable. Now let's go. Actually, let's read through the tweet because I think it's really interesting. So you read the first sentence. Go read the whole thing, and then we'll go to the next tweet.
This right here, what
Yeah, you
began
read
as
the whole thing.
yeah, sure. What began as a casual lunch between 5 Twin Cities software engineers quickly escalated into a frightening encounter after the men were misidentified as undercover federal agents and protesters were alerted to the Minneapolis restaurant where they were dining. Alpha News obtained video and spoke with one of the men, Lee, a software engineer from Plymouth, who described how the situation unfolded. Lee said the group was eating lunch at Clancy's Deli near 38th Street and Grand Avenue South when one of the men, who belongs to an anti-ICE signal chat, received a message from a group labeled SW Minneapolis Rapid Response, claiming that plainclothes ICE agents were dining at the restaurant. My friend was shocked, Lee said. He's on the anti-ICE side politically. He lives nearby. He's eaten there before, and suddenly he's seeing messages saying we're ICE. The software engineers, all white males dressed casually in sweatshirts and jackets, were soon confronted by. Sorry, this thing started playing again for some reason.
Yeah, I know. It just
Were
does it
soon
automatically.
It's just it's X.
Yeah.
All white males dressed casually in sweatshirts and jackets were soon confronted by protesters who surrounded the restaurant, shouting insults and blowing whistles in their ears as they attempted to leave, according to Lee. Lee emphasized to Alpha News that the group's political views were mixed, but said the encounter left some of them reconsidering their positions. One of us is pro-ICE, one anti-ICE, others on the fence, he said. After this, I think some of them are rethinking everything. Well,
And then
Biggs.
you just justified why you were targeted by saying that one of you was
the idea that there was
pro-ICE.
even a mix at the table, that's
that makes you
not allowed.
that you just justified why the anti-ICE protesters target you. We got somebody from the special chat. His name is Doc Gadget 11, and he says, "Imagine if those 5 dudes was any other demographic. Would those people act the same way?" The answer is yes, they would. No, the answer is no, they wouldn't. Do you honestly think that this lunch place didn't have people of other demographics in tables eating in plain clothes? Yes. It was like it's a cafeteria, not a cafeteria. It's like a deli or something. It's a place where people eat lunch in plain clothes in groups. Like, think about this guy. They were targeted. You think in Minneapolis there aren't groups of women eating lunch in plain clothes? I'm sure there are even more groups of women out in Minneapolis. Groups of 5 women. When I go to the city and we go and have lunch, and we sit down in a deli or a restaurant or maybe a fast food joint, or maybe we'll have like some kind of nibbles in like Starbucks or whatever. When we sit down, guess who is occupying most of the other tables? Women in groups in plain clothes. And yet it was not women in groups in plain clothes that these anti-ICE protesters targeted. It was 5 white men in plain clothes having lunch together, because that is not allowed. That is considered suspect by their threat detection algorithms. Let's put it that way. Like that what they think is instinctively suspect and potentially a problem. So they are indeed targeting a particular demographic, and in particular groups of that particular demographic. And also they were laptoping menacingly. So, you got to go after these guys. And don't give me this crap that they would have gone after any demographic. If they were going after every single 5-woman group, like lunch group in Minneapolis, I think they would have been very busy, and there would have been a lot of evidence of it. But somehow this is the only one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we pull up, because this is even more telling. Let's pull up the next one, the one that you originally had.
The Clown World one. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I got a super chow from Albatross for $5. He did not include any message to go along with it. So if you meant to say something, Albatross, he says, if it doesn't read, I said, activists focus more brain power on the goings on of white people than actual white supremacists. Well, there isn't really a distinction in a lot of cases, and again, especially when it comes to men, because like this is why so often white women are the sort of like self-appointed heroes of the story, so they basically go after the white men, like they feel like they're the only ones that can really do it. So yeah, but anyway, so let's go on to the next one. This is Clown World. And it says, man in Minneapolis being confronted and labeled a Nazi over alleged support for ICE before being assaulted and knocked out. Moments later, someone in the crowd shouts, he's one of us, appearing to realize they attacked one of their own. So another case of mistaken identity because some dude just got jumped suddenly. Again, I got to do the sound. Sorry, guys. Just a second here.
It's fine. We'll wait through the mini technical difficulties.
All right, there we go. We're back. All right.
Okay. That's all they asked. Watch out, watch out. That's all they asked. He's one of us. Okay. I'm one of them. He's one of us. Okay, good. I'm one of them. Dude.
Good Lord. What would have happened if he wasn't?
I was with him earlier.
They could have beat him to death, Allison. And
Yeah,
if they did, we wouldn't hear anything about it. It wouldn't be news.
No,
I don't know.
he's just a man. Who cares about them?
Trust me.
And honestly, he sort of deserved it because he wasn't clearly delineating his affiliation in public.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't clearly showing that he was anti-ICE in public. Any kind of dude or white adjacent dude that's walking in public without clearly putting on the anti-ICE burqa deserves to get his ass kicked.
Yeah, this is why, like, we used to have like standard bearers, so we knew like what force they were with, and these guys just need standard bearers and flags and banners and stuff, so that we don't, so that they know who is a human and who is not. Yeah.
And at that point, basically, we're talking about insurrection. Like,
We're already talking about insurrection.
yeah, we're like speed running it at that point. It's like basically there's no denial.
I mean, I think it's taking a little too long to crack down anyway. But I understand that there's a process you have to do. You can't just go in, right? But I do think that something is going to happen. Like there's definitely going to be consequences and repercussions. But let's finish this clip.
The whole time. You touched us, good. You all right, man? Hey, move back! Move back! All right? Move back right now!
Now, is this ICE or are these just the cops? Because it looks like they're coming to help this guy. So
yeah, but is that honestly? Yes, they stopped attacking him, but considering that they attacked him in the first place, it probably is a good idea to get him out of there and get him to somebody like some medical attention.
Mhm.
Right. And the other thing is, he looks like he got a concussion. He was on the ground, right?
Yeah, he was on the ground. He was obviously stunned. He couldn't really stand well. He was like concussed or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and when you're in like a situation of that and everybody's like really high keyed, and there is the push to like justify the violence that you just engaged in. If he says the wrong thing, they might turn on him again. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if he's stunned, he's probably not really fully aware of his faculties. So the fact that the police got in there, got rid of them, or ICE or whatever this is, probably the police, and then pulled him out of that is probably a good thing. Because
yeah, it's probably why they jumped in, because they may have seen this crowd standing around this guy that was like barely able to stand, and they thought, well, this guy's getting assaulted. So all right.
Back up! Back up! Yeah, save your Nazi. Put him in your Nazi van. Go get him some help.
So now this guy, even though he said he was one of them, because the police came, or ICE came maybe, and they helped this guy up, now this guy's a Nazi because he's getting help from Nazis, you see. So now they're calling him one.
Needs a little bit of fucking mental health there. Don't he? Nobody got guns. Hey, you gonna look me in the eye when you spray me? You gonna look me in the eye when you...
Good Lord, you guys almost beat someone to death through your fucked up threat detection, who potentially could have been on your side. So you are literally in a situation where your threat detection is so fucked up. It's just like pinging on every white man in the freaking vicinity. But guess what? Most of you are. Like you're a bunch of disaffected white men who are using violence to try to find an identity. You're trying to go and find a man to beat to death in order to feel like you belong. Right? This is the insanity of this. It's like we're speed running the French Terror here. Like,
well, if you kill enough, maybe as a white man, if you kill enough other white men, you'll be able to
Ascend?
ascend, yeah, beyond being another white guy.
Yeah,
Like maybe that,
you'll be
you
able
know,
to ascend. You know, it's funny because I've recently been looking into and reading a book
transcend
called
whiteness.
a book called Gate to Women's Country, which was written by a feminist, and it pretty much lays out this entire kind of mental landscape that they want men to occupy. So they have these two groups of men. One are what they call warriors, and they live in a supposed honor culture, which actually isn't. It's just it's very violent. There's no real kind of loyalty or anything. It's just an incredibly violent culture of men. And then there's this other group of men they call servitors, and they are the men because they force their boys. The women's town, there's like women's town, and then there's the garrison, and then there are the men who are allowed back into women's town. When they leave the garrison, the warriors garrison, they come back, and I don't know, they go through some ritual humiliation, they beg for forgiveness, and they're allowed a position as a servitor, which is a man who's completely sacrificed every single bit of his autonomy, but at the same time is intensely violent. And the justification for this entire chicanery, because there's this cabal of women who set it all up. They set up the garrison. So they set up the rules of the warriors that they then use as evidence why men need to be put in a position where they have no autonomy. But they set up the example of the men. Like, so they say, well, men are like this, but they're the ones who constructed the example. It's exactly what you were talking about, Brian. They look at feminist literature or feminist productions like TV about what men are, and they say, well, men are like this, that's why it's justified that we take away their autonomy. Same difference with this book. They created the bad man, which they then use to justify taking away men's autonomy. But what's interesting about the servitors is that they are actually intensely violent. Like, absolutely. So it wasn't men's violence that the women in this feminist dystopia wanted to get rid of. They wanted to get rid of men's autonomy and deciding how to employ their violence, so that they turned these men into these instruments of violence, which they controlled, they directed, and they did so by removing men's identity, like a sense that they had any legitimacy as a person. And they created these incredibly violent men who, in a lot of ways, seem to live for killing other men, right? And this is what we're seeing. That's what you just saw. These are a bunch of men who've had their precariousness, what they call precarious manhood, weaponized against other men. Why did they target that guy? Because
they would say that it was because he was wearing camouflage, so they thought like, oh, he must be ICE because he had like a camo jacket on. That's what I think. But
yeah, but that's such a
no, I know it's just like a surface level thing. But I mean, it also he was also a white dude. Like that's
he's a white dude.
But a lot of ICE officers are minority men, but because they're wearing I mean like a lot of them,
But that's not how ICE officers are coded. First of all, there's also female ICE officers. But who's getting attacked? White men.
Oh, yeah.
Because they are coded as being the ones who are evil. They are coded as being white adjacent. That dude was not just attacked because he was in camo. It was a combination of being in camo and being white, which there are a lot of guys who wear camo. A lot of guys who aren't even on the right who wear camo. And those guys
in Minnesota, well, yeah, camo's not a right-wing thing. It's just camo.
No, it's just camo. And that guy who was attacked, right? He was that group of men. Why were they attacked? They were completely in plain clothes. They were attacked because they were a group of men in public having lunch in plain clothes and menacingly using their laptops. But they were attacked because they were white men in public, menacingly using their laptops. And I'm not saying this because I'm like, I'm like a white nationalist. I'm saying this because this particular narrative, that's who their black category is. That's the category of people that has to justify to them why they get to exist in public, right? And has to be really careful about how they signal in public. Because this dude, who apparently was one of their own until he was taken away by the police, in which case he became a Nazi. God knows what that means. But anyway, he ended up slipping into the black category simply because he had a camo jacket on. Right? What kind of mistake is that? What kind of trigger is that? If you're a white dude in public and you make the least amount of mistake, you are suddenly the enemy, and you are going to be hunted down by other white dudes who are going to beat the shit out of you and maybe kill you. Like, and that whole scene where he's like, oh, this guy's one of us. God forbid he had actually not been. What the hell would have happened then? Or he hadn't had somebody to speak up and maybe in the heat of the moment realize, oh shit, I don't want to see this guy get murdered in front of me, ganked in front of me. I'll just pretend like he's one of us to stop this. Like if he hadn't had either at being one of them or had someone willing to speak up and say, hey, he's one of us in order to protect him, what the hell would have happened? Right? What would they have done? With this threat response that's triggered to, hey, that's a white dude maybe wearing the wrong thing or using a laptop menacingly in public or being in a group of other white dudes. Like, these are pretty... The thing is that a white man in public or a man in public, I guess it's a black man and he looks particularly military, or a Latino man who looks particularly cop-like, they might also be folded in. But it seems like that white men are automatically under suspicion. I've said white man so many times in this, but I'm just saying, this is their threat profile. And let's be honest, the reason why it's white men is because white men are the men of men.
Yes. White men are the straight men of men. They are the most privileged. That's what it is. It's it's just a progressive stack.
Well,
They're like at the top of the progressive stack.
You remember
They're the most patriarchal.
The white checklist. You remember the white coded or privileged checklist?
Yeah,
and
I think so. Yeah.
A while back, and you commented and you said, this is just men. This is just masculinity.
Yeah. There was a list of white things, but most of it was masculine things. Yes, I remember that. Yeah, it was all masculine things with maybe very few exceptions.
Yeah. So if you're a Latino man, you're not actually a man. You're just something else, I guess, because you can only be a man, truly a man, if you're white.
Well, I think there is a suggestion though too in that list of whiteness. There is a suggestion that if you are not a white man but a man of a different race, that you are expected to not behave in the ways on this list because you're perpetuating whiteness, which means it's not just attacking white men for their identity, but it's also telling non-white men or all other men that they have to alter their nature so that they are not becoming like white men. So this is why I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but like black men can't be men either, because that's basically perpetuating whiteness according to that, or whatever it is, like essentially a structure, a kind of property that these women don't have. So like they attack masculinity, and I have a clip of a woman that she's an absolute witch, but they attack masculinity and call it attacking something that they think might be like seen as a little bit less insidious. So like if you're say you're a black guy or a Latino guy, and you see a journalist saying that we have to deconstruct whiteness, you might shrug and say, well, they're not talking about me, but they are talking about you. They're just not saying it's you, because when you look at what it is they're actually going after, it's masculinity, but they're calling it white because it's safer to attack that. That's what I'm saying, right? And I know it seems weird because you think that masculinity itself is the safest thing, but these people believe that you can use your race as a shield to protect yourself, at least to some degree, where you can't be criticized. But what they do is they criticize everything that you are without saying it's you. So and you'll see that because when BLM, and I use BLM's mission statement all the time, even though BLM itself is, for the most part, like not relevant, although it's not gone. Because the mission statement is the same no matter what you call the group. It's always like, what is it? Tearing down the patriarchal idea of the family with the father as the head. It's always about removing men, removing masculinity, and they just call it something else. They'll say, no, we're going after white people. And then the black guy's like, oh, well, okay, then. But they're not. They're going after you. They've already gone after you. You can't see your kids. You don't know you don't know if those kids are yours, right? So like we have to like get past that and look at it for what it really is. So
some Albatross says, I'm a straight black guy, so am I still a guy or queer, they, them? Well, the problem is that if you're a man, your masculinity is coded white. So as long as you act masculine, you are the white men of black people.
Yeah,
and
remember they said straight black men are the white people of black people?
Yeah.
That was on the root. They were just telling you. So yeah, they have it. They already have a caste system, and they're just playing word games and rhetorical tricks to like get people to like go along with it. But you're also their enemy just as much. I know you know that. So but it's just rhetorical.
But did you read Albatross's super chow? Because I know it's a little complex.
Well, did he send another one? Because I read. Did he send another one? No, I didn't get another one. No. I read the comment that was already attached to the previous super chow. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It just didn't show up. I just wanted to check. Okay. No,
I did it earlier, but okay. So
but what I wanted to get at is the group of people with no plausible deniability in these people's threat narrative is white men. And I mean, maybe it requires an additional trigger like wearing camouflage or being in a group, but yeah, it's looking like it's there.
It just makes a good excuse. That's all I'm saying. Like,
but
they were on the streets looking for somebody's ass to kick.
Yeah,
and they chose him because probably compared to anyone else who was on the street, he looked the most suspicious to them. And so being a white dude was the primary thing that they looked at. And then they just narrowed it down further. And they said, well, he's wearing camouflage. So, or like the colors were similar. Because I don't know if you know the ICE agents that came out and saved him, they were wearing like tan, kind of like earth tones as well. So maybe they were just like, oh, this is the same thing. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It was originally or primarily because he was a white guy, primarily because he was a guy. So
yeah. And I just want you guys to situate that in your minds. This is their threat profile. This is the out group, right? Okay. This is their out group. Men, white men, but only because white is like saying man. Like it's like man, you got men, and then you got whiteness, which is just like more man. It's like adding man to man. So you just get like double man. That's
squared.
What they mean. Man squared. Like white man is man squared.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So that's why that's the out group. That's why that's the black category. And that is specifically what their threat response is keyed to, which is really crazy because you're looking at this and it's basically white men trying to lynch other white men. I'm laughing, but also crying a little inside. And it's that servitor masculinity. It's that masculinity that denies itself and delights in murdering other men in it, either socially or physically, because it's an expression of not being the one good man. The best way to be the one good man is to just murder every other man. Just beat the shit out of every other man. That's the best way to be the one good man. That's the best way to justify why you should be the one to, get something or at least be justified to continue to exist. All right. So did you want to show you
What's
spoke?
next?
You spoke of a woman who was
Oh
particularly
yeah,
awful.
it doesn't have anything to do with these protests, but
Okay.
I could show you. I mean, there is a conversation going on with this woman. Let me see if I just got to look for it really quick in my yeah, here it is. Jennifer Welch is her name. And she basically just goes after masculinity. So I want to show this. Let me see. Hopefully the audio plays.
We have to go after these MAGA men. One example would be Jesse Waters. This man talks incessantly about masculinity. Joe Biden is not masculine because he sucks on soup. What kind of man sucks on a straw? He goes on and on and on so much about the idealized man. And that's a part of fascism, this, propelling this form of toxic masculinity. Why are you so obsessed?
Okay, stop here. Toxic masculinity. That means all masculinity. All right. I don't know what he's talking about with Biden sucking soup through a straw. That sounds like a joke. But when they talk about toxic masculinity, and I have challenged these people over and over and over again to identify anything positive that they associate with men and masculinity in the same way that they associate negative things, and they can't. So when they mean toxic masculinity, they don't mean a subset of masculinity. They mean that all masculinity is toxic. All of it, because they don't recognize anything unique about men or masculinity that's good. They can't, because that would mean that women don't have it. And then that would be just misogyny. So they can't. Like literally this woman can't, I bet if I asked her, she couldn't identify a single positive masculine thing. And in fact, she would probably identify the desire to have some unique masculine value proposition as itself being toxic. Toxic masculinity. And of course, I'm expressing internalized misogyny when I point that out. So when they say, oh, this is about toxic, no, they mean this is about masculinity, period. This individual that she's talking about, now I may disagree with him about how he defines masculinity, maybe. But I doubt that I would disagree with him on the idea that there is positive things that are masculine, right? Now, the way that she's talking about this, she is pointing to this man and what she really has a problem with, because again, she uses the term toxic masculinity, which means all masculinity is toxic. The thing that she really has a problem with is the idea that this man allows that there's any legitimacy to men, that men actually are a legitimate category of being, right? That men can just exist without constantly having to serve something in order to be decent or acceptable. Like they don't have to constantly be denying themselves and their own existence as men in order to be aesthetically pleasing to her. That's what she has a problem with, that men have any autonomy at all. Like that men recognize that they might have some kind of value that she doesn't control by saying where it exists. That's the problem she has. And I know it because I have heard women like this constantly talking about the things that they talk about. And I know why they attack particular men. They attack them because those men are asserting that there is something valuable about masculinity and being a man, that there is something good. She's not really attacking him because he says that a man can't drink through a straw, because she certainly would believe that masculinity is very conditional. But her condition is that it always exists in a state of precariousness and a state of trying and supplication to whatever thing that she thinks it should be. All right, you can finish this. I will eat my hat if I'm wrong about this one.
No, you're not wrong. This woman has advocated murder of her political enemies, so on a podcast, and she still has a show, doesn't get banned or censored off of anything.
Form of toxic masculinity. Why are you so obsessed with men, Jesse Waters? What's all that about? Why are you so obsessed with trans people? Why are you thinking about genitals all the time? Kind of flip the script. We have to go after.
All right, I'm pausing it
Oh,
there.
yeah,
She
you know
just
what?
this is the thing that they do where if a man talks about masculinity, they just say, "Oh, you're gay." That's what she's doing. Which, by the way, hilariously, of course, because this is how these people are. Suddenly, gay is not like a protected class anymore because now we're using it as an insult against you. Do you see how they do that? They always do that, right? Well, you want tranny penis. That's all. I don't think Jesse Waters. I mean, I don't think he's all that controversial. He's very milquetoast and mainstream. He's on Fox News. He's an anchor. He doesn't say anything edgy. He's not Nick Fuentes. You know, he's not the Tate brothers. But this woman just hates him. Just hates him. So,
Well, of course, they also hate people like me. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care. Like trans people, not gender non-binary, like whatever part of the spectrum you're on, I still think that men are legitimate. Again, they should have the right to exist without constantly supplicating to feminists. And that gets me. Like, and the thing is that way back when I said that the whole thing about trans identity being conditional on other people's approval is like masculine identity being conditional on other people's approval. I remember how pissed feminists got at me because of that. Because
how dare you make that comparison?
How dare I make that comparison? How dare I make the comparison between the things that trans people experience and the things that men experience in terms of always having to justify themselves to a group of people who is the most strident, bitchy, bad faith human beings in all of human existence. Hell, I think trans people probably have it better than that at this point. But regardless, they did not like that. They did not like that, Sam I Am. That's why I'm probably very close to the top in their most hated people list. And I actually have proof of that now. I've got like a cabal of like academic hens clucking over like me being part of the patriarchy. It's very interesting. I didn't even know about that, but
there are definitely female whisper networks on.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
X.
You wake up one night. No, it's not X. It's academia.
Or academia, but well, how are they talking to each other? Are they doing it
Through theses? You know.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You know,
Okay.
Yeah. Through articles and thesis statements.
First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they
write
attack
theses
you
about you,
and then you win.
I guess, yeah.
So
okay, but I just found that it's not every day you wake up and you find out there's like an academic ecosystem that it has grown up around trying to pathologize the things that you say instead of actually dealing with them honestly. And only because, you're a woman and they actually recognize that women do have social power that men don't, but they can't take that to the logical conclusion. So while they recognize that I might have power that men don't in this sphere, they can't grapple with what that implies about their own theories of reality. So they just have to pathologize and treat me like something that's very dangerous and very disease-ridden without recognizing why I'm dangerous. It's a very interesting tightrope that they have to walk. Anyway, have we finished this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah,
so
that was it. I just wanted to share because it's like it's related. That's all.
Mm-hmm. No,
But,
it is definitely related.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, there is a men's rights angle to all of this, and again, I wanted to point. I used these two videos. The one where they targeted the white men, the man squareds, the man square, the multiple man squareds. In the lunch area where they're eating, and then also targeted just a man squared on the street who just happened to be wearing camouflage. I guess he incited that, and I just wanted to point that out because there is a group of people that is definitely squarely within their black category that that is outside of what they think is moral, and it is most definitely male, right? They wouldn't do that to women. They wouldn't do that to white women. It's definitely male. So it's not white. It's male. Okay.
Yeah. All right. What do you
right.
want to do next? The church?
Actually, I wanted to just talk about take this from a different angle. Policing around ICE. Talk about the general stuff that's happening, and my insight into what this implies. So the policing around ICE is being recoded as fascism in a way that that sort of fits the framework that I've been developing around how essentially you take whistleblowing behavior or any kind of policing, and you have a bunch of steps, and then suddenly they're a Nazi, right? So you take somebody who's whistleblowing about an institution who is engaging in bureaucratic graft, and then you have a couple steps and they're a Nazi. It's the same kind of dynamic that I was calling out when I did the video, CNN, where are the Nazis in Boston? It's just
Yeah.
that they declare anything that is critical of the regime to be this black category, but there's particular steps to it. So ultimately what it comes down to is any boundary setting against graft, violence, or fraud becomes patriarchal oppression, which is, as you know, patriarchal oppression is adjacent to fascism and being a Nazi. Basically, if you have a penis, you're probably a Nazi. That's what you're seeing with how these men were targeted. While the people and institutions feeding off the chaos claim moral immunity. So we have the Nazification of basic enforcement. Protest rhetoric repeatedly equates ICE and routine law enforcement with Gestapo, fascist president, and thugs, treating their very presence in cities as illegitimate regardless of specific conduct. Now, remember, what ICE was there under Obama, and in fact, he expanded their mandate, right? And they were doing the same thing, but suddenly it's a problem now. In your framework, in my framework, this is the first move. You redefine policing itself as fascism so that any investigation of wrongdoing, whether immigrant fraud, benefit fraud, or outright violent behavior, can be dismissed as patriarchal oppression rather than oversight. All right, so how this script works on whistleblowers. Protest leaders and allied commentators frame themselves as standing up to fascist ICE attacks on our cities and call for getting rid of those thugs while presenting their own side as structurally incapable of abuse. Once that frame is in place, anyone who points to protester violence or graft, hotels storming, fireworks at officers, swarming journalist cars, or a church incursion, or even violence against bystanders is easily cast as siding with fascism or defending patriarchy. This is your whistleblower. This is the whistleblower to Nazi pipeline. Raise concerns about theft, physical intimidation, or diversion of funds, and the narrative machine relabels you as a fascist sympathizer. Now, why this happens is simple. This framework is built on the idea that anything that men do to police boundaries is illegitimate. It is patriarchal oppression. And this is like basic feminism, like the first thing, or one of the first things that feminists did is they rendered illegitimate the whole idea of men policing boundaries. Like the basic functions that men do to keep a civilization, to maintain it, and to make sure that it can continue. So policing, immigration enforcement, financial audits, and basically anything that you could see men establishing a boundary and maintaining it and judging people not by what they need, but by what they are doing, right? Their behavior and whether or not it lives up to the kind of standard necessary for us to have things like peaceful societies, societies that can have social programs without them being overloaded by individuals who are going into the system unfairly and without proper, they haven't gone through the system, right? So all of this stuff is stuff that men tend to do, is they engage in altruistic policing in order to maintain the structures necessary to keep a society working. And what feminism has done is it has said that policing is patriarchal control.
right? And it's all suspect as patriarchal control. So any policing around meritocracy or external standards and expectation is actually patriarchal control. Police, immigration enforcement, financial audits, hell, even grammar is patriarchal control because it's an external standard that people are being held to, and it's distributing resources and punishment based on that external standard of merit, rather than the way women want it to be or naturally feel like it should be, which is distribution based on need. Okay, and punishment based on whether or not you are in the group or outside of the group. And when I say punishment, I mean lethal enforcement. So if you're outside of the group, you are subject to being killed or whatever else, right? So that's where that is coming from. And when you have a situation where you have all of these people who are basically saying that it is illegitimate to police things like immigration, police things like crime, police things like bureaucratic graft, police things like grammar, like you basically are creating a situation where you have no oversight. And then you construct this cancer mass, this mass that the immune system can't get into and prevent excesses, theft, violence, and all of this other stuff. They can't prevent these failures of living up to these meritocracies that are required for the running of a society. I'm gonna take a brief break and let Brian tell me if I'm making any sense.
I mean, I was struggling a little bit following, but I know what you're getting at. I mean, it is essentially pushing back against a masculine way of organizing society, which is
Yes.
one that has boundaries and rules and laws, and they exist to protect people and keep things moving in a harmonious way. And
Mhm.
feminists have reframed all of that to be patriarchal oppression because everything men build is bad because it's men that built it. And so you essentially create an atmosphere that wants to rebel against it. And I think it, just to add to that too, I think it's useful for actual revolutionaries that actually want to overthrow the government and tear everything down, which we have always had in our midst. And they just use this narrative to get that. Now, I don't think that every woman who's out there, putting their body in the path of ICE vehicles is like a revolutionary in the sense that they know what they're actually driving towards. But that's the beauty of this, is that you can emotionally possess or emotionally capture enough people to get them to act on this and make them feel like they're doing a great heroic thing, like they are, the resistance,
warriors
like they
against the
are,
patriarchy.
like they're fighting against the Empire from Star Wars, like they're fighting against Voldemort, and they will do it because they want that. And it is to satisfy their own vanity, their own vainglory, and their ego.
Well,
And
it's also because, like Marshall McLuhan says, people without an identity, when you strip like an identity, so the male and female identity, and you strip it because you've constructed a framework in which men are oppressors and women are the oppressed, which is neither identity is something you want to be. So you don't construct men and women as having unique strengths or weaknesses and unique ways that they help each other and potentially hinder each other. You actually construct it in the most toxic way possible. You create generations of people who don't want to be those things, who don't have an identity as a result of something that's really fundamental and almost like transcendent. Like, the sex that we are born as is not something selected by human society. It's something selected by biology and evolution that are forces that are way beyond us, or God, whatever you want to say. And that when we come together, we produce life. That's transcendence. And that's tying our identities to something that goes well beyond the state or the nation or any of these multiplicity of identities that we've invented. That's tying it to something that it's bigger than all of us, right? And because we're denied that, we become identityless. We become anchorless. And then we become, as Marshall McLuhan said, people without identities seek belonging or a sense of belonging through violence. So you strip people of their identity, of natural comfort in their own skin, and then you give them an identity as a holy warrior against patriarchy, which is also a holy warrior against all the things that men do to maintain society. So that's policing, that's auditing, that's immigration enforcement. And then there you go. You have a zealot army at call whenever you want. And against any kind of oversight. So if you're somebody, for example, if you are a bureaucrat who wants to open up a nice fat vein of fraud and live off it for the rest of your life, then you're going to encourage this. You're going to want a narrative that oversight itself is illegitimate, that the expectations that people be judged by their actions and their behaviors and not their needs is illegitimate. And that's the other thing. Like this is women saying, and it's mostly women, let's be honest, that it is illegitimate to judge people based on their behaviors to a standard and not based on their needs. Right? So if you choose to operate in that male toolkit, you are now illegitimate, and you are now potentially a justified target for violence, essentially. But again, very beneficial narrative for anybody who wants to evade being judged or held accountable. Right? So how the script works on whistleblowers. Protest leaders and allied commentators frame themselves as standing up to fascist ICE attacks on our cities and call for getting rid of those thugs while presenting their own side as structurally incapable of abuse. Once that frame is in place, anyone who points to protester violence or graft, hotel storming, fireworks at officers, swarming journalists' cars, or the church incursion is easily cast with siding with fascism or defending patriarchy, because you're defending holding people accountable, which is evil, according to feminism. That is your whistleblower. That is the whistleblower to Nazi pipeline. Raise concerns about theft, physical intimidation, or diversion of funds, and the narrative machine relabels you a fascist sympathizer because you're supporting judging people by external standards and merit, which is male-coded, which is fascist adjacent. Case study. Faced ICE protests as procedural immunity. Protesters storming city's church in St. Paul targeted a pastor they believed also heads the local ICE field office, disrupting worship with ICE out and justice for Renee Good. The Department of Justice is now probing for potential civil rights violations against congregants. Against congregants? I didn't even know that. Okay. Within the activist narrative, that's something that, guys, look into that, because if it's against the congregants, they were the ones who were attacked. So that could be wrong, but whatever. Within the activist narrative, this was reframed as righteous anti-fascist action, yet it functionally normalizes invading private institutions and religious services whenever someone is perceived as in line with enforcement, erasing any boundary between political grievance and direct coercion. Well, of course, I mean, we apparently this side can justify killing people for disagreeing. Similarly, the swarming of Nick Sorter's car, jumping on the hood, alleged camera theft, dragging incident are justified or downplayed because he's coded as a Nazi-adjacent influencer, not as a civilian or journalist with rights. And as we can see, this category, this black category of Nazi-adjacent or ICE adjacent, it floats around and it coalesces on a particular demographic where graft and theft hide. Behind the omnipresent fascism language is a concrete material struggle. Non-governmental organizations, advocacy groups, and local political actors benefit from expanded budgets, contracts, and influence tied to managing perpetual crisis around ICE and immigration. And in this particular case, they also benefit from all of the fraud that's being discovered in Minnesota. The fraud around, food programs for kids, autism programs, daycare programs, care of your own relative programs. All right. So labeling scrutiny of these flows as punching down or supporting fascist ICE shields, bureaucratic and nonprofit graft from normal auditing. Anyone who asks where's the money going, who is actually getting hurt, and who's getting paid can be folded into the fascist patriarchy conspiracy or category. All right. So how the men's rights lens sharpens all of this. From a men's rights perspective, the pattern is familiar. The moral vocabulary of safety and protection is used to justify asymmetrical power. Here are the power of activist networks and bureaucracies, while male-coded roles, policing, boundary setting, whistleblowing, are pathologized as oppressive. And now it's just men who are being pathologized as oppressive or targets or justified targets. The ICE situation shows that when men in enforcement or even male whistleblowers try to stop concrete harms, physical attacks, property destruction, financial fraud, they are not evaluated on facts, but whether their actions threaten a patronage ecosystem that survives by branding all constraint as fascist. So once we set in place the feminist assertion that oversight is masculine, masculinity is fascist adjacent, and any kind of opposition to that is smashing patriarchy, you construct a system where bad actors operate with impunity because they can code any kind of enforcement. Any kind of enforcement has to deal with being prejudged as patriarchy. And we all know it's patriarchy, fuckface. Frame this way, stop theft Nazi is not a joke line. Stopping theft makes you a Nazi is not a joke line. It's a concise description of how the current ICE protest discourse turns any attempt to police behavior or audit systems into evidence of patriarchal fascism while leaving the underlying graft and violence structurally protected. So that's the ultimate thing. This isn't really about ethics or helping people. It's about using a narrative to get the heat off your back so you can continue to operate your criminal schemes without oversight. All right, so here's a rundown of the allegations against the Democratic politicians and bureaucrats in Minnesota. Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey. Department of Justice obstruction. The U.S. Department of Justice has opened a criminal probe into whether Walz and Frey obstructed federal immigration enforcement through their public statements, potentially violating 18 U.S.C. 372, conspiracy to impede federal officers via force, intimidation, and threats. Walz labeled ICE a modern-day Gestapo. Frey called for ICE agents to be removed from Minneapolis and described the federal presence as an occupying force that has quite literally invaded our city. DHS accused 3 Democratic Minnesota lawmakers of leading protests to an ICE facility with the explicit goal of hunting down ICE officers. Frey and Walz called the investigation politically motivated intimidation meant to silence criticism of federal operations. All right, so Representative, oh God, I'm going to screw this name up, Ilhan Omar.
Yeah.
Ilhan Omar. Fraud graft associations. Trump and Republican officials have repeatedly tied Omar to the massive fraud scandal in Minnesota's social programs, particularly involving Somali American communities. Omar has called the framing a conspiracy theory and accused authorities of using the fraud investigation to intimidate immigrant neighborhoods. She claims Democrats do not condone this fraud and corruption. Trump has publicly questioned her immigration stance and accused her of being connected to scammers calling for deportation. Okay, this is the underlying fraud. Feeding Our Future and daycare child nutrition schemes. Federal prosecutors have charged 92 individuals in a 250 to 300 million fraud scheme tied to the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, with 51 plus convictions so far. 82 of those charged are Somali American, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Broader estimates suggest fraud losses across Minnesota's social programs since 2018 could exceed 1 billion, including childcare subsidies and federal nutrition aid. A federal prosecutor says that nearly half of the 18 billion in federal aid Minnesota received across 11 programs since 2021 may have been misused. The Trump administration has froze childcare funding for Minnesota, et cetera. Okay, so here's the political dynamic. Democratic leaders frame ICE enforcement as fascism and an invasion, while critics allege the rhetoric shields bureaucratic graft from oversight. So they're not just declaring ICE as fascism. They're also basically declaring the financial oversight and what's going on in Minnesota as fascism. Calls for accountability or auditing of fraud-ridden programs get folded into the fascist ICE narrative, allowing the question, where did the money go, to be dismissed as racist targeting of immigrant group communities. And again, this is women's language. What does that mean? Racist targeting. It means that they are saying you are holding a vulnerable group to a moral standard. That's what it means. And you're not supposed to do that. You're only supposed to give vulnerable groups resources. And that whole formulation works if you're talking about infants. It doesn't work when you're talking about adults who need to be held to adult standards of ethical comportment. Anyone, whether federal agents, journalists, or whistleblowers, who presses on the fraud angle risks being labeled as aligned with Gestapo tactics or patriarchal oppression. All right. So what's the deal on Walz stepping down? Walz stepping down. Walz is not stepping, okay, according to this, is not stepping down from office, but he has ended his 2023 re-election bid under heavy political investigation and pressure over Minnesota.
He's not running next year. That's all.
Yeah.
He's not stepping down. He's just not running next time.
Yeah, I know. Welfare fraud scandal. The evidence on him is about oversight failure and tolerated corruption, not approved personal kickback scheme. So it's not that he is necessarily implicated in the fraud. It's thus that somehow this gigantic Katamari ball of graft just appeared under his watch. What Walz has actually done, in early January 2026, Walz announced he would not seek a third term. He has refused to resign and said he will serve out his term, arguing that stepping out of the race lets him focus on defending the people of Minnesota against criminals who prey on our generosity. What the hell does that mean? Evidence and allegation about fraud under his watch. Federal and state investigators describe one of the largest social services fraud scandals in Minnesota history, involving billions in misused Medicaid and welfare funds and high-profile cases like the Feeding Our Future scheme. A House oversight hearing summary says Minnesota's Department of Human Services intentionally backdated documents and paid nearly $680,000 to a guarantee with no evidence of work done, and that the state employee who approved it then went to work for that same guarantee, cited as rampant corruption under Governor Tim Walz's watch. It's hard to argue that you weren't aware of this. GOP witnesses told Congress that Walz was aware of widespread taxpayer fraud for years, but it failed to intervene. And Republicans argue he and Attorney General Keith Ellison ignored repeated red flags in Somali-linked nonprofits and daycare benefits programs. In response, CMS has paused, and we already covered that, it's paused Medicaid payments to 14 Minnesota programs. All right. So he's not personally accused. It's just that he has been so negligent in his duties in making sure that this didn't happen under his watch. And it's just like anybody who is looking at this and actually looking at what's going on. I know there's a bunch of you who are like, oh my God, we're anti-ICE and whatever. But have you ever stopped and asked yourself, this is a guy who is most likely responsible for incredible negligence under his watch. And he has thrown this out, this whole threat narrative around ICE while under investigation. And you don't find that a little bit suspicious? Right? That's just him. What about all of the rest of these bureaucrats that are responsible for this gigantic rat's nest of graft? And them throwing out this threat narrative around ICE and federal investigations while they're being investigated for stealing from Minnesotans, stealing from American people. Like, you don't find that rather convenient? You don't find it convenient that these people are invoking this narrative that any kind of oversight is patriarchal and fascist adjacent, just as the oversight is about to hit them? Like, none of you are like, that seems really convenient. None of you who support or are against ICE, right? None of you are thinking, wow, that's quite the coincidence. You get what I'm saying, Brian?
Of course.
Yeah. All right.
Well, like this kind of inefficient, if not straight up corrupt way of running your government, and people, if you it essentially invites this kind of thing. Like, it invites corruption, it invites criminality, which is what I think happened. There were people who exploited this. And there was a combination of people who had something to gain. Maybe the politicians were hoping to get votes. Maybe the scammers were hoping to get paid. Maybe everybody was hoping to get paid. And it looks like the feds are, looking into it, and it may get exposed. I don't know. But I think that, and it's a convenient cover as well to be like, no, this isn't, we're not stealing from the taxpayer. We're not engaging in criminal activity. We're not letting in a bunch of like illegal people so we can get their votes. What's actually happening is white supremacy and patriarchy, and you have to stop it. And who listens to it? Who's out there protesting? Who went out there and said, OMG, I have to protect the Somalis because, or not even that, like they were going after the criminals. And there's another thing too that's very important. The only reason why the Trump administration just hasn't sent in tanks, which I don't think is a good idea, because we don't want more innocent lives lost. But the main reason why is because he's supposed to work with the local governments to get this stuff done. Like, a lot of the states, most of them are working with him. They're like, okay, yeah, we'll help you round up the illegals, right? They want them out of there. They want Tren de Aragua sent back. They want the MS-13 gangs. They're going after the violent felons. Okay, that's where they are now. Like, eventually, we'd like to get all the illegals out, but we know that that's like probably an unrealistic task. But as many as we can. The border is effectively closed. A bunch of countries can't enter. Like, mostly not like Canada, but like a lot of like.
Well, except
countries
for me,
that are,
I can't enter.
Oh, you might be able to. You just haven't tried yet. But but there's a lot that's been done. But the truth is that these people are supposed to be working with us. So if there's an insurrection act is passed, it's going to be because Minneapolis because they can't say we're sorry. They can't say we were wrong. They're incapable of doing all that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're like, yeah, if they find out what's been going on, a lot of people are going to go to jail. So we're going to basically make this into a much bigger thing. And it's a distraction. It's a distraction from all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of these protesters, and I think that there's a lot of people who are paid. They're not there organically. They're there to create more chaos. They're there to sort of like foster this stuff. They are, it's a distraction. They're using, and women are going along with it. Like, I doubt
they're
that
not
there's
just going along with it.
I mean,
They're freaking. They're the
I know.
freaking spear.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so why does Walz benefit from weaponizing anti-ICE sentiment now? Walz is under intense pressure. He dropped his re-election bid amid revelations that Minnesota social services programs saw some of the biggest fraud losses in the country, and federal auditors found that the state Medicaid agency in substantial noncompliance. At the same time, Trump's DOJ has opened an investigation into whether Waltz Frey and other Democrats impeded ICE operations and inflamed protests. They've accused of casting ICE as a Gestapo and an occupying force while mobs confront agents. By framing ICE as a fascist patriarchy and federal scrutiny as intimidation, Waltz can argue that Washington is not targeting him from allowing billions in graft,
but for standing up to Trump's war on immigrants and dissent, which is particularly egregious, right? Because what I see happening is that these Somalis have become a shield for, let's face it, once you get up above the Somalis, there's a bunch of pimping Karens and bureaucrats who are making bank off of this situation. The more public attention stays on ICE shootings, protests, and Gestapo language, the less oxygen there is for detailed discussions about how state agencies under his watch backdated contracts, paid out hundreds of thousands with no documentation, and let politically connected nonprofits loot programs for years. All right? This is meaningful, guys. This is why you won't have services for anyone if you do not control this, right? But instead, the very people who should be providing a whistleblower function are out there harassing ICE, right? If there is, and I think there is, a legitimate position for oversight over these agencies, over these bureaucratic, then why aren't you actually doing that? Like, why aren't the people who are supposed to be auditing where if things are moral, if the funds are going where they need to go with for people who have vulnerabilities, why aren't they doing that? Like, why is the left out there fighting something that they wouldn't be fighting if Obama was in office? These fraud scandals, okay, for a narrative war point of view, Waltz versus fascist ICE is a much better story for him than Waltz, overseer of historically large welfare fraud. So escalating anti-ICE rhetoric right now is the rational damage control within his coalition. And of course, he can do it because there's a whole generations of people who regard any kind of oversight to be patriarchal oppression or racism, which is basically the same thing. Because, you know, as we all know, it's men when they judge things, the only thing that comes out is some ism, not actual merit. Are these fraud scandals? Okay, these fraud scandals are not restricted to Minnesota. It's probably why this controversy is erupting everywhere. There are similar structural vulnerabilities nationwide. So we're probably looking at like a nationwide network of these bureaucratic grafts, rat's nests, all of which can mobilize these threat narratives around any kind of oversight. And why can they mobilize these threat narratives around any kind of oversight? Because for 3 generations, we have taught that men are evil oppressors, and when men enforce boundaries, it's suspect. Congressional oversight hearings on Waltz explicitly frame Minnesota as a case study, not an outlier, arguing that lax verification, captured agencies, and politically protected NGOs are common features of state-run welfare systems, with Minnesota just being the place where it got big enough and ethnic patronage dense enough to explode publicly. Do you really think these bureaucrats give a crap about the Somalis? Like, have you noticed? I noticed that Osman Gold picked up on this. The usual suspects is what he called them. So people will confront the Somali daycare centers to find out if there's any actual children there. And then the Somalis will come out and they'll mill, right? And they'll just be sort of not really doing anything except like mumbling. And then a Karen will swan in. You notice this, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
A Karen will drive in, you know, and start labeling everything. Oh, this is, what are you doing? What is this? What is this you're doing? You're being racist, right? You're anti-immigration, right? So the people who are investigating just want to make sure that this money is actually going to what it's being said that it's going to. And the Karen, the pimp Karen, I'll call her, will come in and start reframing the investigation as basically some form of fascism, some form of people judging something or the behavior of these Somalis, not by their need, but by their ethic, like the standards, the behavior that they've engaged in.
which is not, because the thing is, the narrative about bringing in Somalis and giving them all this money, it is making a lot of people a lot of money. I'm going to say that. And it's not necessarily the Somalis. Like, people focus on that. But if you look one layer up, you see the Karens, the Karen layer. You have the Karen layer, and they are the shield. They're the ones who go out and explain how any kind of oversight is, fascist adjacent, is patriarchal oppression, is fascist adjacent. They trot out all of the rhetoric that shields the bureaucratic graft a level up from them. And that's probably where you're seeing the real money being made. Okay, so the Somali immigrants are being used as immigrants as a shield for their own gains. Okay, so there are publicly, there's people who are saying this as well. Somali communities provide the moral shield and headcount. The real winners are the political, NGO, and business network skimming the money. How the Somali shield works. In the major Minnesota cases, a high proportion of defendants and intermediaries are Somali or Somali American, especially around feeding our future and related daycare nutrition schemes. Public rhetoric from some Democratic officials and advocates has leaned on protecting Somali communities from racist targeting. And when you hear racist targeting, once again, what it means is judging them by merit instead of by vulnerability, judging them by the things that men hold more important rather than by the things that women hold more important. When fraud is investigated, implying that aggressive audits equals xenophobia. So these bureaucrats these fraudsters brought in a vulnerable group, probably legitimately vulnerable, used them to front their schemes. Because I don't think the Somalis thought this up. No offense to the Somalis, but they're very tribal people, and this probably doesn't occur to them. So they were brought in to front these schemes by these people specifically so they could defend themselves from oversight, because then they could frame the oversight as fascist. And of course, fascist is male coded. The framing makes it easy to collapse two very different things into one. Legitimate immigrants using programs intended, I'm sure they exist. Politically connected operators, often from those communities, but tied to state, but tied into state and NGO leadership, fabricating meal counts, fake kids, and shell nonprofits to siphon funds. Right? So you got legitimate immigrants, then you got the ones who are cheating, and then you got the bureaucrats on top of that who are cheating even more. Who actually benefits? Federal charging documents and oversight hearings describe multi-million-dollar properties, luxury cars, and overseas transfers purchased by the alleged ringleaders. Money that was supposed to feed children or support low-income families. House oversight accuses Walsh-era agencies of rubber stamping grants, backdating approvals, and rehiring people into NGOs they just paid improperly, which suggests an embedded class of administrators, lawyers, consultants, and nonprofit executives as the main winners. So you got the Somali immigrants, right, as the shield. You got the Karens as your Gestapo that prevents the oversight from going past the amount, because you need the two, right? You got the small, you got the vulnerable people, and then you got the Karen saying, "You're hurting her," right? You can't do that. And then on top of that, you got the entire freaking ecosystem of bureaucrats siphoning from the taxpayer. Ordinary Somali residents, meanwhile, mostly get the stigma and blowback. That's the other thing. There probably are some Somalis who are here legitimately, right? They're also going to get this blowback. Do you think the people who are exploiting them give a crap? No. They're there to provide us a human shield, and that's it. They don't give a crap about them. They don't give a crap about the Somalis who emigrated legitimately, are pursuing legitimate businesses, are just trying to raise their families, aren't part of this graft, who are also going to be targeted by this. That's how it works. Generally, people think in categories. They don't care. They don't give a crap.
In fact, these Somalis who would be like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to be associated with that, I think those are bad people, these individuals who are part of the rat's nest of bureaucratic graft would probably regard those Somalis as being mouthpieces of the patriarchy, mouthpieces of fascism. Because that's how it works. You know that, Brian? Like, if anybody of the category that they are supposedly defending speaks out against them, they automatically revoke their right to be defended and get folded into the evil empire that needs to be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
How this ties into anti-ICE narratives. When ICE or federal auditors move in, local actors can invoke Trump's wars on Somalis or attacks on immigrants, which is, again, the people, ICE, what are they doing? They're holding people to standards that men hold people to, rather than delivering them things according to the needs like women do. So it's a fight between a male kind of ethical system and a female system based on from those who, what is the communist statement? From
For those were you talking about, like those with their ability according to their needs, something like that?
yeah, like that. From those who produce to those who need. Okay. All right. Okay. To delegitimize the operation in advance. So they use this rhetoric to delegitimize the operation in advance and also supercharge people to be aggressive towards them, even if the targets are clearly the graft networks. So this whole passion play is to protect a bunch of thieves. That turns Somali communities into a human shield. Criticism of corrupt intermediaries or demands for enforcement can be reframed as hatred of Somalis themselves, which is rhetorically powerful and politically useful for people sitting on the money flow. All right. And then, so what we have is the Somalis, who are the shield. We have the Karens, who are the Gestapo, right? And above that, we have the faceless bureaucratic graftsters who are sucking all the money. This is I've seen this so many freaking times, over and over again. But anyway, I'm going to step off my podium, and Brian, you can say anything you want. If you think I've mischaracterized something or said something wrong.
Well, I don't want to speak to the intentions of any one group. They're all criminals as far as I'm concerned. So I say we investigate and lock up whoever needs to be. But I think a lot of this stuff is sort of like it's self-propelled. It doesn't need, like, there's not a lot of parts you have to move. You just put people in the right position and, like, and let things happen organically. Like, women, the Karens, whatever you want to call them. I don't really like Karen because it's kind of racially charged, but the women are going to essentially become mother hens to whatever the sort of fashionable underserved group of the week is. And it just so happens, because of Nick Shirley exposing the fraud, it just so happens to be the Somali fraud in Minneapolis. I don't think that Somalis everywhere are going to be catching flack. I think that ICE is going to be very specific and focused.
Yeah,
they're going to go after the people who broke the law. I know, but yeah, well, and I think that other people, like regular Americans, may view them with suspicion. I think it's deserved. Whatever, earn your way out of that. I don't have a lot of sympathy, Allison. I don't.
Okay.
The whole country is a kleptocracy. Like, the Somalia is a shithole. That's why they're here. And I'm not saying it's some biological determinism, but that is the way that it is. It's not like, I don't know, countries like Uganda or Nigeria that seem to do a lot better. So I'm not making a racial comment here. I think it's a cultural problem, at least. But my point is that I think that all you got to do is, you want to invite corruption, you bring in people from a society that is known for, scams, because that's what they did to each other, because that's all they knew in their own country, because it's so corrupt there. And then you have like, these sort of like SJW women in the same place, and they'll stand up for them. And yeah, you'll grift off of it, and they'll probably take the fall, while people that are more savvy or intelligent will either get no consequences, or at least they'll make the most money. But everyone in this situation is shit as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So yeah,
I agree. And like I said, there might be blowback to Somali immigrants who are here legitimately. And maybe you're right. Maybe they should earn out of that. I'm just saying that it will exist, and that is an unintended consequence, and these people don't give a crap.
no,
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's
yeah, no, it's okay.
To
I
me,
mean,
that's
like
the
I said,
proof that it's all about protecting their money scheme. All right,
mhm.
so that was
I
it for
got
me.
a Rumble rant here.
Cool.
I want to read really quick, but I'm basically done too. Nobafan 21 gave us $1 and says, I think I know the answer, but I'll ask just in case. Given what happened to Germany in less than 10 years, why does over 10 years of facts and logic not working not justify might makes right? Well, I mean, it will come down to force if we don't, but I think we can use like reason to solve these issues still. I think that we want to, most people want to. Because if it comes down to Mike Mate's right, that doesn't make it moral.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Well, we have
but I
to get
think,
rid of the other. We got to
yeah,
get
go
rid of
ahead.
the idea that we we have to understand that the way men do things is not wrong, right? That's
Mhm.
a big thing that we need to remember. So the way that men structure things to police boundaries and expectations is absolutely vital for any kind of a society worth living in. And if you're going to cast them those behaviors as patriarchal or fascist adjacent, then you are going to construct a hellhole for yourselves.
Mhm.
And you are, and before you construct a hellhole for yourself, you're going to be providing a lot of cover for people who steal from you. And there are people in the voiced or the special chat.
Yeah.
Somebody is like, you need to meet the Grim Reaper.
These
Presumably to
people
us.
need to meet the Grim Reaper. I don't know who they're talking about,
Bitch is
though.
babbling, bloviation. Okay, you don't understand what I'm talking about. Maybe that's on you. More race baiting. I love ICE. They're my heroes. I don't love ICE. I just recognize that they're a function, right? And they are a legitimate function of a government that wants to maintain, of a country that wants to maintain itself as a country. Anyway.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't see anything particularly interesting in the special chat. I'll see what's happening in the main chat.
Okay.
Yeah. Mulling around mumbling. I guess Jin was laughing at my characterization of the Somalis. And Albatross says the Somalis are probably just along for the ride. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they didn't develop this idea. I mean, maybe what happened is, a bunch of ships sailed by white peoples, showed up on their shore and were just like, well, why don't you come into the hold here and we'll take you to the US and use you for our schemes. Okay. I've seen a couple. So Motorcyclist says, I've seen a couple legal Somalis speak out, but they are the extremely tiny minority. Yes, because they're not useful to these people. So they probably didn't get a fast track to this is the other thing. When your country is full of this kind of greed, it fast tracks criminals in order to front these schemes.
Mhm.
Mia is locked in. Yep. Yeah. She's
Yeah, she's locked in. I have to figure out how to, because she likes to stand here. She's standing in front of my light. So I got to figure out how to keep her here in her spot because she likes this spot, but not have her be in front of my light so that she's throwing a shadow on me and turning me into a void. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that bad, but you know, it's a little bit of a problem. But she reminds me of the things that matter, you know, not being bitten, I guess, because I haven't fed
Oh,
her in the last 20 minutes. All right. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about this. If you would like to send us a message at any point, even after the show is over, feedthebadger.com/justthetip is the best way to send us that message and the best way to give us a tip. And if you want to support us, that is feedthebadger.com/support. I'll check out and see if anything has gone through.
sure.
Nope, just one customer order, which I think was Albatross. So, okay, I'm handing it back to you, Brian. So, last words,
Okay.
whatever you want.
No, I think you basically covered it. All right, guys. Well, if you guys like this video, please hit like. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we talked about in the show today. And please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame. We will talk to you all in the next one.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.